Hey, what's up? Kirk of Effectatron here, and I recently got the opportunity to talk to Dominik, who basically I was like, hey, can you explain scene nodes to me? Because I want to understand them, and Dominik is the scene nodes guy. You need to go over to his channel and check his stuff out and give him a subscribe. He's critically underrated. Basically, he gets it, right? And he has all these amazing tutorials on creating these really cool geometry things inside, and just like these are things that just should be built in, and then after some of his things they do end up getting built in, like the partition thing and stuff, but his versions I personally think are slightly better for some of this stuff at least. And he just like he gets it, man. And it's so we talk about basically, I'm like, what the heck are scene nodes and when and how do I use them in my C4D workflow? Because it doesn't match the rest of C4D. It is like, and that's kind of what we talk about, is how it's really understanding that it is its own beast, and scene nodes is a bad name for it. And and basically he just kind of explains when and how he uses it, and it just kind of clicked a little bit more, and it's kind of amazing. And you should definitely check out his stuff. And he was super helpful in understanding how to approach it, when to use it, how to use it. And this is really just, you know, us talking about, you know, the resistance to learning it, as well as like just kind of the fact that it feels like tacked on to C4D, but really like once you understand how to use it, like he has like all these things that you can just like click and drag on that are like these, he makes his own modifiers, and that sounds amazing to me. And so he just kind of explains that, and we talk about it, and hopefully it was very, very helpful to me, and he was glad enough to share it. Let me share it with you guys as well, so hopefully it can be helpful to you. But yeah, go check out Dominik's channel because he's great. It's fantastic. Yeah, so yes, but without further ado, let's get into it. Okay. Real quick, I do want to say, if you guys want access to my newsletter that I send out, definitely check that out. It's completely free. It's got AI, 3D, and cool just tech news and tutorials and things on there. So definitely want to check that out. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's always pretty cool stuff that I think's neat. So yeah, check it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I really appreciate you helping out, like basically breaking down scene nodes for me, because it's just, I feel like there's an initial hurdle where, like, you know, the normal workflow is everything goes on the top right and it goes underneath or above, and it's all hierarchical. But when you switch it all to scene nodes, everything is now left to right, which I think you can transfer that. But the thing that's weird is I want to, you know, build it in the scene nodes, but then still interact with it in the viewport the way I normally do. And I'm like, okay, I just want to move this over here now. And it's like, no, this is right here. Like, how do I? Yeah. So that's kind of like, I think a lot of people get caught up and they don't want to mess with it because it's just too different. And I'm hoping that you can help me bridge the gap between, you know, understanding, you know, the workflow of C4D normally and how to translate that into the scene nodes, so you can actually just, we don't have to make like insane Houdini style things, just basic things to get started, getting comfortable in the scene nodes.
Gotcha.
So like,
yeah,
what?
totally. Actually, doing something similar with a guy from Italy, because he also asked to try to. He's a teacher in Milano. And he also want to learn to jump into scene nodes. He has a little bit of a Houdini background, and he has always this Houdini thing. He always want to do it the same as Houdini. And I think also the problem is that a lot of people think, oh, I want to do it like in cinema-ish, Mogrive style. But scene nodes, you have to get it. Scene nodes is its own world. So you have to really dig in, let loose of everything else. I think maybe the closest thing you can compare this is geometry nodes in Blender, of course.
Right.
And
exactly.
it is kind of programming. It is visual programming. So, and this is maybe the people why a lot of people get too mad. They think, okay, it is okay. I can stuff like do like in Houdini, but you don't get as much high level nodes as you have in Houdini. So you have to build your stuff from the bottom up if you really want to do stuff like this, and then you need some basic knowledge in terms of vector mathematics or linear algebra or
it's
whatever.
Like it's interesting because like if you try to look up like C node tutorials in C4D. I mean, it's basically just you and like maybe a couple tutorials from Noseman or something here and there, but he never like his stuff he never like finishes anything. You know, he's like shows you the basics of like one thing. It's like, okay, but I want to make this. How do I make this? Like it's tough to apply what he's taught sometimes, because he doesn't ask those questions that I have that I want to ask. It's like, okay, I've built this. I want to move this 10 meters back. Like, can I just do that? Like, is that something I can? How do I put this in a scene that I'm building versus how do I, do I have to build my scene around the scene node after I've done that and put everything else in afterwards, or how do I where does this fit in my workflow versus like I'm gonna
I think because Xenos I think it's totally wrong name because it doesn't have nothing to do with. Are you a little bit familiar with Houdini?
No, not really. I mean, I know the node piece.
At the end, you don't build scenes inside C nodes. That's
right.
Actually a totally wrong name because you build your scene still in the object manager.
Yeah, and like geometry nodes is probably a pretty accurate name for it, right?
Correct. That would be the better name. So geometry nodes or whatever. Yeah, mesh node. They have. I think the better names is that what they use as those main capsules. You have like the mesh modifier. What is it called? They call it mesh nodes. Those types where you can build C nodes into it. Like it's spline.
Operators, they have like the node operators and stuff.
No, it's not what I talk about. When you type in nodes in the search engine, nodes. Yeah, you got the nodes mesh, the nodes spline, and the nodes modifier, and the node selection. So these are the 4 capsules. There is one other one. So, but these are the you can say, okay, these are the 4 caps where you build your stuff inside. And this is in one, you build your own mesh stuff. In one, you build your own spline stuff. In one, you build your own modifier. So that's, I think, already the thing where people already struggle. Where do I start building C nodes? So,
right. Yeah. Because like if you just switch to like the C node layout, it's just blank.
Correct. And then you're in the C nodes editor, and there is like you see nodes, it has no connection to the object normal object manager. So that's why they built those capsules. You have kind of an visual object, but inside this object you have your own world where you build. There you build just like geometry. You don't build like I built this object and this object. I built my special tool or whatever or something like this. So this is it's pretty so it's pretty much comparable with Houdini SOPs. So there you all just also mostly in Houdini you build just geometry,
right?
And then you have your geometry object, and this lives in a bigger scene where you can move it around. And
right. So I guess that's like my first couple questions with it, because I'm so unfamiliar. It's like, okay, let's say I build something like a mandible or something, just a tree, whatever, inside the C nodes. All right. And I have that in my C4D project. Can I then just like, does that translate to somewhere in the hierarchy of the object manager? Like,
no.
Yeah. So like, that's what I don't get. Like I guess that's the biggest gap. Cause like, okay, so I have that. And then, okay, in C4D, staying inside C4D, can I make another C node object and combine, like have both of those things on screen at the same time? Or is it like, I guess
you can, but then it is hard to interact. Maybe
right. Yeah. I guess that's what the hardest part is, like figuring out is the workflow. It's not like everything else in C4D where everything is all about mixing everything together. It's like any emitters, any layers, any modifiers, anything you stack them on, and everything is blending together all the time in this hierarchy. But when it comes to C nodes, it feels like that's an isolated thing. And once you're done with that, how do you take that and put it in your normal C4D workflow? I guess is the biggest hurdle.
Gotcha. So there is, as you have there are some global, what do you say, like, so if you think of vertex maps and vertex colors, So these are kind of global attributes where you, that you can use inside MoGraph, you can use inside textures, you can use inside whatever, inside dynamics also. And these you can also use inside C nodes. And this is kind of the global transferring. When you think of geometry nodes or Houdini, there you have, they call it attributes. And with attributes, you can pass around everywhere. So you can use it in dynamics, you can use it in MoGraph and whatever. And here it is the vertex color and the vertex map. I think it's also not the best names in cinema, but because they're pretty old. But at the end, you can pass with vertex maps and vertex color. You can pass at mostly any data around wherever you want. You can use a color as a vector. You can use an vertex map as an integer, as a full value, as a float value, or whatever you want to call it. And that's the
bridge between the scene nodes and your actual scene.
Totally. So maybe let me show you how you normally typically would start with scene nodes. I can share notes,
please.
Yes.
That helps.
Can you see it?
Yes.
So, and so the thing is that the C node stuff is not here integrated in the normal layout. So you have to start in the content manager, and there you have nodes, and on top, the first one is asset construction, and these are actually, it's as it is called, you build your own node assets. They call it first capsule. Now it's more like they call it asset, and you can ignore those two, the distributions. This is, I think, it's more advanced thing, but these four, with those you normally start. So you have to decide what I would like to build. Will I like to build geometry? Will I like to build just splines or just a modifier or a deformer or whatever, or just a selection tool. So this is the four types. There is one type is hidden, and this one is under experimental, because this could change in the future. And this is called the object group. And this is actually the one with the most power. It's the most powerful, because with this one, when you drag it in, you can see that it has on generator, it has a mode called an instancing mode. So here you can build instances as you do with a cloner. So on a cloner, you have also, of course, you can decide, is it a render instance? And an instance is, at the end, it is an instance of a geometry object. And this is the only, the only node capsule or asset where you can build like instances. And all the other ones, there you just work with raw geometry. So when you drop them in, you see here there's no way to say, okay, I want to work with instances. So in terms of go on, where you have already some questions.
No, sorry. So you got me think. This is my biggest hang up. I think, is figuring out, like, you see Houdini, you see C4D, and when you think of C nodes, and you see the Blender geometry nodes and all those tutorials and stuff that they can do, there's this weird, there's two different ways that I see the power of the scene nodes, and I may be completely wrong, but basically there's like the way that is building geometry, where like you have, I'm not sure the implications of, like, or the benefits of modeling in that sense, like procedural generation of geometry, like making, I don't know how far it goes beyond greebles and trees and things like that. Like, can it create leaves upon trees? They're like planes that you can assign materials to that. Like, how deep does it go for that? And then the second thing is, like, in the Blender geometry nodes, where I see more than anything is kind of like, do you know anything about like the Dash plugin in Unreal Engine 5?
No.
Okay,
really?
So let's say, for example, you are building a fence, okay? And this is a good example in Blender geometry nodes too. And you have posts and you have poles, and you want to just draw a spline, and then the generator, the node generates it.
Gotcha.
Is that, and so it's like, kind of like what a cloner can try to do somewhat, like inside of C4D, but it seems like inside the C nodes you can build a more complex version. So like if I wanted to build a drawbridge between 2 points, I could, where I say here to here, and it's going to add in the planks, add in the ropes connecting the 2 pillars on the end, and I can build that inside of the scene node. Whereas if I try to build that inside of a cloner object, and or try to right click and use different things to say like align to spline and stuff like that, it's going to get a lot of manual adjustment where it feels more like PCG, like procedural content inside of the scene nodes. Like, is that kind of where you see this being a more useful tool? That kind of stuff, like as far as C4D artists, like if you wanted to build bridges, fences, tree lines, city streets that have randomly generated street lights, benches, stuff like that, like buildings and blocks? Or is it more kind of like, do you see the power of this being more in modeling details and things or something like that? Or is it like, I don't,
it is both.
When you see C nodes, what is it that you're like, oh, I can finally make this? Like, what is it for you that you're like, this is what I can finally make?
I think because it is still pretty young, so there are some downsides, of course, and some limitations. When you think of, at the end, you could do mostly anything because of if you do super simple tools,
right?
To the point where I can build my full bridge generator. There is one downside because this is if you think of a bridge, I want to build a bridge, and there is I make just a line or say, okay, 1 point here, 1 point here, and then everything between will be procedural. So, and you know, to think of a bridge has a lot of planks. So you know, to think of, because I want to build a huge bridge, I want to make those planks as instances. Yeah. So kind of, and maybe those instances have different individual textures and everything. So, and this you normally would do with instances you would build inside the object group. Right. And on the inside object group, there is this workflow, the operator workflow. When you work with operators, you work on an object level. So, and there you can build instances and everything. So you could build, but this workflow is something that Maxon thinks that they want to rewrite this. They want to rethink it. They think that's why all this operator stuff is here under experimental and has this little yellow flask here. Yeah. So you can do it. So also maybe I told you the guy from City Builder. Yeah. Also, he builds his tools in with MoGraph. So I think Florian, you can do impressive stuff with MoGraph. But he was also very interested. Hey, can I do this in C nodes? And I said, yes, you can, but it would be maybe a little bit risky to start doing it with the object group stuff. So because in the future stuff can change, so you could build something and it gets broken in the future. So maybe not the best way. So, but in terms of let's make procedural geometry objects. So let geometry, as you say, modeling. Yeah, there is a lot of functionality is already there. So it is the same as you do in Houdini or in geometry nodes. You build your object in your scene. So in geometry, I'm not very familiar with Blender, but there also you build like in geometry nodes object. And this object there you start to build your node stuff, and this object lives with the camera and the light objects in one bigger scene. And this is pretty much the same also in Houdini. You build normally your sub object, geometry object, where you make your crazy geometry stuff, and then you go to now in modern Houdini you go to Solaris and add lights and text and everything. So that's pretty much the same concept here. As I said, there are some downsides. Working with instances is still a little bit risky because this stuff can change. I think the problem is one big problem is Redshift is not integrated because they bought Redshift and I think it will take like 2 or 3 years till Redshift will be fully integrated into Cinema, and then maybe also integrated into C nodes. You can do shader stuff inside the C nodes. You can also import materials, but I think it's still a bit tedious when you compare it to maybe to geometry nodes, because they have Ivy render and cycles render that is fully integrated into Blender, and this is still a big issue of Cinema, because Redshift super cool render, but it's not at the moment in this state, I think, not very good integrated, and this is a little bit of a downside. Also, one downside is you can't work with as you normally would think. Okay, in Houdini, I can work with all the dynamic stuff.
Mhm.
Their dynamics, the unified dynamic system in Cinema is not integrated into CNodes. This is an own system, but you could, of course, build your own dynamic system if you like inside. If you know how, at the end, if you know the math, you can do it, because CNodes are very performant. You could do stuff like this, but I think it will take some time that they start to integrate stuff. So, in my opinion, when I use it in my normal workflow, is more like for little tools.
Right. Like, give me some examples of that.
Maybe.
Like, what is your go-to? Okay, you're deciding whether you're going to do it the C4D way or the C node way, then the old way or the C node way. What makes you pull the trigger on doing it the C node way?
Yeah, for example, you can build tools, the stuff that you normally have to do manually inside. So for procedural selection stuff, or super simple. Here, maybe also some different modifiers that I'm normally working on to build stuff. This may be a good example that I can explain is maybe, for example, the normal Blender, something. It's a nice tool where you can maybe add 2 objects or as many objects that you like, and then they start to blend the normals. So you need a lot of geometry for this. Does it look fine? Because I hit on a little bit more. So, for example, like this.
You've blown my mind. See, like, that's the kind of stuff that I didn't even know. I had no idea that you could do that. Like, I don't know if it's Maxon waiting until they're ready to, like, officially release it or what, but they have this tool, and I feel like it's just sitting there in a closet, like, swept away, and they're kind of like, don't mess with it yet.
I think the problem is like a lot of, because the typical C4D user is like, okay, it is a motion designer and has not a lot of background in terms of computer graphics and programming and stuff. I have a background in this, so that's why more as a hobby. At the end, I'm also a graphic designer.
It clicks faster,
and that's it. So if you would hit the same wall when you don't have enough knowledge in terms of Houdini. You can go into Houdini, and Houdini has a lot of cool high-level tools that are missing inside CNodes. But if you go maybe 10 years back, you also don't have those tools, and you have to know, okay, how geometry actually works, how you build geometry from scratch by programming. And this is the thing that maybe a lot of people don't get at the end. It is programming, kind of, if you really want to.
Yeah, like, I mean, just basically watching what you did and seeing some of the things you have there, it's just like, I've been using C4D for years, right? And I never thought that I would have a tool inside of C4D that allows me to create my own modifier that I can add to the list of C4D's modifiers. And that's exactly what you created. Like, you just made your own modifier and put it in there. I was like, I had no idea that you could do that.
Yeah. That's the cool thing. So that's maybe the playground where you can build your own little stuff. So that's where I use it the most, because maybe it's also it's my job. I never use it, and I never have to build like super huge complex stuff. And when I have to, then I switch to Houdini normally, because they're in terms of time. But I think that the future of CNodes should be it's like tool building, and not more like, okay, I want to. I think that the best you had a super example with the bridge. So as you
Right.
say, stuff like this will be because they're also heading in a direction where they want to make cinema ready also for game developer, and then think then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I've seen they've added a lot of Unreal Engine stuff and everything, and like I love that.
yes.
But I've been diving into Unreal Engine 5 because
yeah, you are. Yeah, I
I'm
see
like
that.
you can't beat like that workflow in that viewport is like this is like as a creative it's like that. This is what I want. Like why does it take a half a second or a second for my Redshift light to update, or like it locks up when I copy a light in Redshift? I'm like, come on! Like I can just see it live. I can have rain and stuff in my scene. Like yeah, so that definitely. Yeah, because that's what like the things in Unreal Engine, like obviously they added the PCG, which is basically either matrix scattering or cloners inside of T4D, except with I think with a lot more of the control, like I think it's probably more comparable to the Blender geometry nodes and probably scene nodes, because it's like rather than using like a push apart modifier with the field of like creating a ring around these trees so your bushes don't spawn around the inside the trunk of the tree. Like I feel like you can control all of those things inside of the scene node probably easier, more streamlined. And I guess yeah, okay, good. So I have like a basic understanding of its capabilities at least.
Totally, yeah. Because when you think of Unreal, at the end, Unreal is the game engine. They need to give you the ability to dig deep and program everything, and so because at the end it has to be completely interactive. Because here's also maybe something that I built is the surface stippling. So this is something where you can add like nice distribution onto objects depending on a vertex map. So let me show you. It's also a tool that I'm working on. Let's add you some segments here. Let's add an oh it's in here, right? And let's add some random. Then oh, not the spline modifier. Wait, it's the wrong one. Curve. Yes. Just to see it better. And then at that you can see it. Oops. Here you can see it's a full tool. So it's a tool that I told it has its own parameters, and it's okay. Which one is the surface object? Then it starts to. Hide it here, then you can add some additional clones here. Let me wait. I remove the preview and clone some stuff here onto it. So let's use object. This one, then use vertices. Here you go. And so you can add some iterations so the stuff will starts to separate better, and also you could use a vertex map here. So then really is a little bit too harsh here. I can work with the charge. So then it starts to a little bit too much. Starts to separate on this vertex map, and you could also use it as a solver, so it starts to separate animation.
Okay.
So yeah, you can see it, and then at the end you could do a lot of stuff with it, and also at the end it's just points. It spits out points, and you can use it for. I made also like this is the surface stippling is like this technique where on the black areas you do this. Do a lot of stitches and
okay.
Yeah.
So like with this tool that you've created, like basically, or a scene node that you create, and you want to use vertex maps, you could like add like condensation in like a crevice or something like easily like.
For
I
example,
guess
you could paint your vertex maps. For example, you said with trees, maybe you want to say where you have dense forest and where not so. And normally the problem is with you need a push apart, and the push apart, you can do stuff, but the push apart is normally deleting then clones, and it's not the best solution. And with this solution, you could say, okay, I want to define where I have dense forest and where not so, and you will never have overlaps. And at the end is you can also it's just the barrier is your own imagination what you can do with it at the end. So it's more like providing some tools.
And I feel like the huge advantage it has, again, that I didn't even realize it had, is that once you figure out how to do it, and you have, rather than like, because the way I like build a lot of my like project files and stuff, like my dynamic rain and stuff like that, like it's all still in the normal hierarchy here, and I'm like labeling things, put your stuff here, put this here. And this way of doing it, where it's like one modifier you slap on and it has like the information there in the attributes panel, that seems way better than the way I'm doing it. Because like, let's say I did want to do like a quick like tree line scatter, like something where you could throw an object in there that had like a thin base but a fatter body, and you didn't want the body to touch. Could you build that out as like a surface noise kind of pattern thing, or whatever you call it? Blue, was it blue?
Yeah, surface blue noise. So this goes in a similar direction. So surface blue noise is this algorithm,
and
you can expand on this, of course, because this is already there for you. So this is the distribution. This is kind of the nodes graph, if you want to think of it. So and then you have those nice distribution, and then on this distribution you could export. I think there is a problem. So you have the distribution, then you can export them as points, and on the points you can add data with vertex maps and vertex colors, and these data you can use outside of C nodes. So for example, I want to use it inside Cloner, I want to use it inside Dynamics or whatever. This is normally the way how you transform data from one point to each other. So maybe I could show you a little example. Think of
my mind is just like racing with ideas of like what I'm like, I just want to make you a list of like, show me how to do this.
Yeah, when you think of, okay, I want to scatter points here, just simple points maybe on the surface.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people ask like, how they want to either scatter sugar across little gummies, or they want to do like water droplets across a can, but they don't want to use like a texture map and have to deal with Redshift's displacement and have like a super high poly, whatever. So like they just want to put a little water droplet or multiple different water droplets they model on a surface without them like overlapping, a bunch and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And be able to take that and put that on any object.
For example, yeah, totally. So and there you hit with normally with a MoGraph, you hit the wall. Yeah, you have to push apart, but the push apart is just, I have just one size for every clone, so you don't have
or you have to use like the plane and then scale it down to negative and have a map. Right. It's like,
or you have to use dynamics, so the dynamic will push apart. So this is also so. But the way you would do it, like, okay, what I like to build, I like to build some points, because I need some points with some information that I can then use in MoGraph maybe to place some stuff on those points. So okay, that's the first thing I have to think of. Okay, I need points. I need to generate geometry. So and that's when I would like to generate geometry, I need a nodes mesh. So because the nodes mesh is the nodes capsule that I can build geometry. Okay. So and when you double click, then you jump into this this node setup pops up, and then you already see you have here an geometry output, and this will just export at the end. It will export just as a geometry object when you type C. So this is the end output, if you want to say.
Gotcha.
It's just raw geometry, and on the raw geometry you can add vertex maps and vertex colors. And that's the same thing you can do also in here. So then first thing you need to, I want to import the plane because I want to scatter on this plane. So there are different ways to import.
Okay.
The
This is
easiest
where
way
I get stuck, is right here.
So you just need to know how to, there are different methods to import stuff. So the easiest way is, I think what most people do is just drag and drop it. Okay. And then you have it as a classic object. But this is kind of the old way, and this is the way it is useful if you think of, I want specific, I want the parameter information from my object, then you use the classic object. Mostly in terms of when I build a generator or a modifier, I just need the geometry information of an object.
Yeah. So like if you had like an asset from, I guess this is a real second question, but it's like if you had an asset from like Kitbash of like a mech, and it's like a bunch of objects, do you need to make connect all those objects into one geometric mesh, and then you could just take that into here?
Yes, you can connect it, and you can again you can explode it then inside of if you want to work on each different. At the end, if you want to import, there are different ways to import stuff. So there you can also import a list. You have a list where you can throw in a lot of objects, or you can say, I want to import all the childs. So maybe I can show it to you. So when you right click here and say I want to add an input, then you see here the white stuff here, the two on the bottom here. You can import it as a child object, or a link object, or all the children as a list, or a link list, like a list where you can throw all the objects in. Mostly I think of, here I like to see my plane because I don't want to import it as a child. So normally when you import it as a child, then the child will disappear. So that's why I import it here as a link. So when I think of in a cloner, you also do say, cloner, I want to import an object, and you add the object as a link, not as a.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
The cloner takes the child. Normally the childs of the cloners are of course the clones. So. But what we are building is kind of when you think of like an atom array, where you also put stuff under this, all the green stuff, this and geometry generator, all the green elements. You will already see when we plug in here a plane here into here. Normally it should when we output stuff, and now we have here the object. We have here our object. So we have the object link, and we can twirl this down here, and then you have all information that you get from a raw geometry object. This is the matrix where the object lives in local space, and then the global matrix where it lives in world space. And then, of course, the geometry. Then you get the object color of an object. This is normally referred to this color here. And also the name, something that you sometimes use, but what you most use geometry.
Matrix, you said, is kind of like. So that's kind of like the transform information?
Yes.
Okay. Right. See, I never would have thought that, because every time I ever use matrices, it's always like
kind of
place for a cloner.
In some cases, this is very useful. It's very useful that you have this information.
Okay.
Because when you let's close this to have a little bit more space here. When you think of now the plane lives here in our world space, so in this coordinate, maybe rotated like this. So, and now let's say, I have now here the geometry of my plane, and let's output this. And you see the plane will now, because we are just importing the geometry, we don't import the raw geometry of the plane object. There is no information about the transformation. This lives here in the world space, and here our nodes. Maybe this makes kind of sense.
Yes.
So because we have just the raw geometry, and the raw geometry has no information about these coordinates, but those coordinates are those two matrices. So this is the local matrix. If the plane is maybe inside of a null object, then this will always be the local matrix, and this is most time you need the global matrix because you want the object where it lives here in your scene space. So you can transform this geometry, for example, say transform the geometry here, and say I want my geometry transformed by the global matrix of this plane object. And here we go. And now
So I didn't know whether you would do it with a node or if you needed to like add an output. But is it always just the geometry output, or are there multiple outputs on the right side there that you can do?
Here you have just one. Yeah, you will always just have a geometry output because we're building. We have a nodes mesh because this is what it expects at the end. So we're building kind of a single mesh object. The only capsule can build more than just one object is the object group that I showed you, where you can build instances. There you can build like a whole list of objects. So, for example, if you want to build, but at the end, when you convert it here, you see at the end you have an raw geometry object, and you see the axis is now here in the center, and the geometry gets transformed by our transformation here, but the pivot is still here. So just transforming the geometry, not the object itself. So
okay.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
we moving. Like you can think of like when I have a plane here, when I transform the geometry. Okay, normally when I take all the points, move them over, and here you have geometry. I don't transform the actual object now. Then here the object actually is still here. So that's the
makes sense. Okay.
So maybe let's back on track.
Okay.
Now I have a geometry. Now I want to build like a distribution on this object here. So I could say, okay, the surface blue noise is the classic distribution. Let's say, and tap in blue noise here. Then you have this surface. You also have the surface scaled blue noise.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have here something special. The output here, you can see it is an array collection. Do you know what an array is?
I mean,
programming terms.
No.
Never?
I guess not.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I feel like I know what's going to happen, but not.
Yes, an array is like a list of entries of a similar object. So it can be a list of a number, a list of a vector, a list of colors, and here you have like more than just one array. So we can, when you like to output here, this will not work. So we have to have a look into it, and we have to iterate over our collections here, and we will see what's inside the distribution. There you have, because we scaling points on the geometry, we have now the surface tool gives us different information. It gives us first if the matrix information of each distribution point. Then we have the index, of course. We have a source index. This is not relevant here. And we have the ratio and also color information. So this is the surface scale because it gives us all this information for each point. And now if we want to like to build points out of that, we have to feed this into let me say, we have to set geometry. So let's set geometry. So it's geometry property set. And here we have also an array. You can see here we have here an array with vectors. So this is just it is expects here at the moment here we have just an empty geometry. There's nothing inside. And with the set here, with the set position, we can set points onto an empty geometry. So we could also, I think we can also plug it there. No, we can't plug in directly, but we can, instead of iterate, we can say decompose here the container here. Now we can, I think the matrix should work. Yes, I think this will convert. Now you can't see nothing because there's a little bit of a downside. This is also something that I have on my wish list on Maxon. So please if you just have points, there's no way to see the points. So that's a bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's definitely a bit. That's something I have to fix.
And even if you throw like a Redshift object tag and it isn't like recognized as like particle points or anything like that?
No chance. They, of course, you can hacks and maybe clone stuff onto it. Maybe you can use a matrix, let's say object, and this one, and then of course vertices.
There you go.
And here,
so it's still there. Okay.
They are there, yeah, but you can't see. I think that's super annoying. You can't see the points here, so that's why I built for myself some little visualizer myself, so I can see stuff. But yeah, for matrix object, you can do it.
So okay, let me pause you before we get too deep.
Yes.
All right, let's say we're teaching somebody that it's new to this, like me, and I can get to, surface scatter blue noise, and then I understand now I understand a collection and a container, which I'm not sure the difference between those two yet. But then I guess I don't know how I'm supposed to know without watching a tutorial what comes after the surface scale blue noise if I want to adjust my geometry or whatever.
Yes. So
there's no I can't
and you have to learn a complete new system. It is not
if I can't drag out and it give me a few options.
You can be the best cinema user, and it is a complete new system. You have to learn the system if you want to use it correctly. This would be the same if you want to learn the geometry nodes. You can be the best Blender user, but if you have no idea about a little bit of programming, and so it will be a hard time. So you have to learn a little bit of basic programming and vector math at the end. It's the same. This also helps at the end if you work in Houdini. Houdini has as the nice thing that you have a lot of, as I say, high level nodes that does a lot of stuff for you and maybe makes stuff more like cinema-ish, so understand.
Yeah.
But on the top, so mostly you can open every Houdini node and dive deeper and deeper and deeper. And I see at the core, you also have just like math. So, and that's maybe the thing of C nodes. It's not from the casual cinema for the user. It is as also cinema.
Okay. So if I want to learn, the basic vector math or programming to kind of understand. So when I open up my options of nodes, I can say, I know what that node does. I know what that node's going to do. What is it that I should look up, outside of C4D so that I can learn that?
Again, I think you don't have to go outside of I think the Core4D makes a very good C nodes series. They have a complete from total beginning. They're explaining everything, also explaining a little bit the math behind.
Okay. Would you say it's Color 4D that you said?
Like Core4D, let me check. Core 4D. Yes. And here you go. Go down. They start here. See C node basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're explaining the full all the basic stuff here.
Okay.
So this is a good start. But when you jump into this tutorial and already see they also start to explaining data types. This is something totally normal that data types that you also have in every programming language. So what are data types? You have integers, floats, vectors, and stuff. So and what is a loop? You have a for loop. What is an if statement? What is all this stuff? But you can, if you're interested into watch some stuff about coding train. Super cool. You have a lot of super basic stuff, because when you once learn a little bit of programming, doesn't matter which language. I think for a designer, best language would be Python or JavaScript, or for example processing. They're very easy and they're very visual based at the end. Okay. And it's hard to say. For me, I started reading when I started this stuff. It was this book called let me pull this up. It's from Coding Train, and this book. He's a very nice YouTube channel. Also a very entertaining guy here. So, and he wrote a book called what is it called? Is it Procedural Design? I think something like this. Coding Train. He has a homepage. Video.
Again, because my computer,
sorry. Yeah.
No, my computer's filled up space and I had to delete space.
Let me search it. I think I also wrote a new one. Nature of Code. Yes, this one here.
Okay.
Yeah. The nature of code. And you already see here the background. There is a kernel.
It looks like a vector flow.
Yeah, correct. And this is how I learned it, and I always had already as a child the passion about all procedural stuff and programming and everything. So that's why I was big, because at the end I ended up as a 3D motion designer, and always had the problem with Cinema. Cinema is super nice program, super fast. It's my go-to mostly, but on some points you hit a wall and you think, fuck, I want to do it, but you can't, because then you start to trick around and try certain things, and then you see, okay, you will never get there because the tools are not built for stuff like this. And that's the cool thing there. You can jump into C nodes, can build it in C nodes, a little stuff, bring the data back that you need. You can use it then again in MoGraph or whatever. So that's the cool thing about it. But I definitely would recommend if someone want to dive deep without that's
going to help you across all the wherever, if you end up using PCG and Unreal or Blender geometry nodes or whatever.
Yes. I think also if you want to learn Unreal, as you said, if you want to learn and want to write a game in Unreal, you have to even dig much deeper into this stuff. So yeah, but at the core, there is, if it is a 3D software or a game engine, at the core, the code is the same. So the principles, the math, the algorithms are the same. And if you want to have it also in an entertaining way to learning stuff like this, there is also a very nice. Let me pop some cool resources up for you. He's super entertaining. It's the Sebastian Log. It's him. Yes. And at the end, they're all game developer, but they explain like because he also started with some super. At the end, he also shows some code. So, but he explains some core fundamentals of game programming. So that's the cool thing. So he built here a little world explaining noises, Procedural Planet, classic, and all this super entertaining. Or here, you're the typical road with a spline stuff, and you
like that's like I want that in C40.
Yes, yeah. If you want to build this in C40, you have to. Yeah, you can do it, but you need to know the math behind it. At the end, it's the same if you want to build a game tool. I think the most tools for games for modern games that also special scattering tools or whatever, they are built in Houdini, then ported into Unity or Unreal or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but people that build those tools, they are all technical directors. They know how the math works behind the scene. So
because I mean that's exactly what I want in C40. At least me personally. I'm sure there's obviously infinite applications of this, but like if I have a spline, I want to drag a node onto it. And make this.
Totally do it. I think the best way is to search for small projects first. Try to do small stuff first and figure it out. And I think an important is to know the limitations yet. What we have now with C nodes. So I think that the main thing is it's not super interconnected with all the other stuff. You can't do dynamics. You can't do volumes. And you can do Redshift shader stuff, and also you can do instancing and cloning and everything, but beware, this stuff can change. But at the end, in terms of geometry generation, spline generation. There's most everything there. Of course, a lot of high level nodes are not there. You have to build a lot of stuff at your own. But the most things just search for tiny solutions and try to build those.
Yeah,
build on top.
Interesting. I don't think I knew that that's kind of what its best purpose was for, kind of.
Yeah. The modeling tools, I think that's the stuff that you already maybe saw in other tutorials, maybe from Losman. The model tools, they are already very high level, if you want to say it. So when all those blue ones here, not the utilities, geomodifiers, all the modifiers that you also can use as modifiers here. So
but those exist in the scene node as well, right?
Yes, and those you can see they work more like a little bit like Houdini, where you have just one geometry stream. So you use an inset and you have geometry in, geometry out. You have to insert geometry, then and so on. Okay. But these are all, as I said, these are all already high level nodes.
Okay.
So you could do all what those nodes are doing. You could build those at your own. But you need you need to know the math behind it. So this is maybe a lot of people start also to hit a wall inside. They see, okay, the modeling tool is cool. I can do stuff like this. And then they want to do something specific because they know that you can do this also in Houdini or in geometry node, geometry nodes with one single node. Cool. But then this node is missing. And then they think, C nodes can't do this. C nodes can, but you don't have a high level node. You have to build it as your own high level node.
Okay. And I super appreciate everything. My little one is just a year old, has just woken up, and I need to go tell her for her nap or whatever. But yes, I'm gonna digest this over the next few weeks and look into this stuff. Really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure to
Until next time, man. All right, dude.
Bye, Derek.
See you. Thank you.